The silent witness of time, the Armenian Genocide of 1915 and its memorials. Before we proceed, a word of caution. The events we are about to explore are deeply distressing. They involve accounts of unimaginable suffering and loss. Some descriptions may evoke troubling images, and while these truths are difficult to confront, they are necessary for understanding this chapter of history and ensuring its lessons endure. In the vast annals of human history, there exists a tapestry woven with triumphs, struggles, and tragedies. Among the darkest and most poignant threads are those that recount humanity's capacity for destruction, moments where we have failed to protect the most vulnerable among us. Today we embark on a reflective journey through one such chapter, the Armenian Genocide of 1915. This tragedy, often overlooked yet devastating in its scope, continues to cast its shadow over modern history. We also explore the enduring legacy of this genocide, beautifully encapsulated in the Armenian Genocide Memorial, a site that embodies both remembrance and resilience, the seeds of tragedy, context, and prejudice. Let us travel back to the early 20th century, when the Ottoman Empire, a once mighty realm spanning Europe, Asia, and Africa, was in steep decline. By 1914, this empire, often referred to as the sick man of Europe, was grappling with internal strife, territorial losses, and the pressures of World War I. Against this backdrop, the Armenians, a Christian minority within a predominantly Muslim empire, became scapegoats for the empire's woes. Armenians had lived in the region for millennia, contributing to the cultural and economic fabric of the empire. However, their status as a minority subjected them to systemic discrimination and occasional waves of violence. Anti-Armenian sentiment was exacerbated by the rise of Turkish nationalism and the assertion that Armenians, seeking greater autonomy or alignment with Russia, were a threat to the empire's unity. These prejudices set the stage for what would become one of the first modern genocides, a systematic campaign of annihilation. The genocide began on April 24, 1915, a date now commemorated as Armenian Genocide Remembrance Day. On this day, hundreds of Armenian intellectuals, religious leaders, and prominent figures were arrested in Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul. Many were executed or imprisoned, effectively decapitating the Armenian leadership and leaving the community defenseless. From this initial blow, the campaign of annihilation spread across the empire. The Ottoman authorities implemented a series of coordinated actions designed to obliterate the Armenian population. Deportations, hundreds of thousands of Armenians were forcibly removed from their homes and sent on grueling marches into the Syrian desert. These death marches were marked by starvation, dehydration, exposure, and violence. Survivors recount harrowing journeys where entire families perished along the way. Mass killings. Men were often separated from their families and executed en masse, while women, children, and the elderly faced atrocities ranging from rape and abduction to murder. Towns and villages were razed, and Armenian churches, schools, and cultural sites were systematically destroyed. Cultural erasure. Beyond the physical destruction, the genocide targeted the erasure of Armenian culture. Manuscripts, art, and historical monuments were looted or destroyed in an attempt to obliterate any trace of Armenian heritage in the region. Global indifference. Despite numerous eyewitness accounts by diplomats, missionaries, and journalists, the international community largely failed to intervene. This apathy only emboldened the perpetrators. By 1923, an estimated 1.5 million Armenians, roughly two-thirds of the Ottoman Armenian population, had been killed. The survivors were scattered across the globe, forming the Armenian diaspora that thrives today. The crisis of 2023, the fall of Artsakh, and a new wave of refugees. Tragically, echoes of the past reverberated in the events of 2023, when Azerbaijan launched a military operation to assert control over Artsakh, Nagorno-Karabakh, a region long populated by ethnic Armenians. This offensive marked the culmination of years of tension following the 2020 Nagorno-Karabakh War and left the Armenian population of Artsakh in a dire situation. The invasion. In September 2023, Azerbaijani forces overwhelmed Artsakh in a swift and decisive attack, effectively dismantling its de facto independence. Despite a ceasefire agreement, the Armenian population was left vulnerable to intimidation and violence. Ethnic cleansing and exodus. With no viable means of protection, over 100,000 ethnic Armenians, virtually the entire population of Artsakh, were forced to flee to Armenia. This mass exodus was one of the largest humanitarian crises of the year, leaving many families homeless, destitute, and traumatized. Humanitarian concerns. Refugees arrived in Armenia with little more than the clothes on their backs, facing food shortages, inadequate shelter, and uncertainty about their future. Many of them spoke of threats, arrests, and human rights abuses, further highlighting the precariousness of their situation. Cultural and historical loss. As Armenians were forced to abandon their homes, they also left behind churches, cemeteries, and cultural sites, many of which faced the risk of desecration or destruction, echoing the systematic erasure of Armenian heritage during the genocide. This modern crisis serves as a stark reminder that the lessons of history are far from universally heeded. The Armenian Genocide of 1915 and the events in Artsakh in 2023, though separated by over a century, are linked by themes of displacement, cultural destruction, and international indifference. The lessons of history. As we stand before the Armenian Genocide Memorial, the wind carries whispers of history, echoes of voices that were silenced yet demand to be heard. Memorials like Tsitsernakaberd do more than commemorate past tragedies. They challenge us to reflect on the fragility of our shared humanity and to act with compassion and vigilance. The Armenian Genocide and the fall of Artsakh are painful reminders of the need for vigilance in safeguarding human rights. They compel us to confront uncomfortable truths, advocate for justice, and ensure that those who endure displacement and suffering are not forgotten. A beacon of hope. The Armenian Genocide of 1915, the Tsitsernakaberd Memorial, and the 2023 Artsakh crisis stand as profound testaments to the resilience of the Armenian people. They call upon us to remember the past, confront injustice in the present, and work towards a future where such atrocities are unthinkable. As we tread carefully on this hallowed ground, let us recognize it for what it truly is, not merely a monument, but a silent witness, a teacher, and a beacon of hope. For in the dance of memory, loss, and hope, we uncover the essence of humanity, fragile yet capable of extraordinary compassion. Let us heed these lessons, for the future depends on our ability to honor the past and protect the dignity of every human life.